Hello, YouTubes. We're setting up right now for Coda Radio, a double coming up. Mike and Wes are en route to studio right now. I'll be joining for the first one, and then they're doing a second one, so stick around. It's a live, long, like, double stream. Like, not one stream, but two streams. Like, but in one stream, I think. Probably. Yes. Guys get here and get all set up. I'll give you a couple of pro tips. If you're watching over on YouTube, go over to jblive.tv for the embedded stream, or you can go to irc.geekshed.net for the chat room. Then it's bound #numbershine Jupiter Broadcasting. You go in there and chat with the guys. If you're over on Twitch and YouTube and the Ustreams and stuff, you're more than welcome to watch there, but we can't monitor those chat rooms, you know. So you want to go over there to that there jblive.tv, or we have it embedded full screen at bit.ly/JupiterChat, where you can find it as well. All right, Mr. Wes is here, getting close. Mr. Dominic's en route. Oh, man, 2 Coda Radios? Are you serious? Man, you better go grab a cup of water and maybe take a bathroom break, you know what I'm saying? I'll give you this song to get that done. There we go. What's up with that? Give me a little more level. Seems a little low. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Hello, chat room. Hello, Mike. Still seems super low. Give me your take on that. Doesn't that seem low to you? Doesn't it almost seem like I'm not even in front of the microphone?
You sound all. How do I sound?
Much better.
Much better? Really?
Yeah, let me see how I sound in these headphones. Check 1, 2. No, okay. So these headphones just fucking suck.
Equipment problems. That's how it goes on a Monday.
It's a big difference. It's a big difference. Check. Yeah.
Dude, these Sennheisers just don't quit.
Well, it feels like I'm missing part of the range. And so I'm like, what's wrong with the EQ? The EQ's off.
Right, but no, it's just your terrible cans.
That's what she said.
Oh yeah.
I think I'm really looking forward to this Montana trip. The kids are so excited.
Oh,
so
I bet
excited.
they are, man.
They're so excited. We got them to agree to eat the same common food.
That is huge.
Mhm.
That is huge. It shouldn't be, but it's huge.
Which makes meal planning on the trip so much easier.
Oh my god.
I know.
Oh!
I know. Hello, Mr. Dominic. How are you? I heard him for just a brief, he was there, and then...
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh. Hi, Mike.
Something. Hello, Mr. Payne and Mr. Fisher. Oh, you know why? I don't know
Something
why.
strange. You're here, duh.
Stranger Things 3.
Don't say anything. I've got the season, but I haven't watched it yet.
I'm 2 seasons behind, so.
It was Hadia's idea to start watching it.
Yeah, my wife wants to watch it.
I'm staying off till I know I have like a chunk of time that I
Yeah.
can actually devote to it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's just going to be too tempting.
Yeah, I'm about to start. So I wrapped up Deep Space Nine.
And you're just telling me this
Well,
now?
we just did it this weekend.
Wow.
Well, no, we did it. It was interesting. Like on the trip, we just had a couple of times in the hotel room where we could just watch. Like it
You
worked
could
out
sit.
perfect. Like one day, we decided to watch. Like there's only like 1, 3, or maybe it's even 4 part. In season 7, they go from like screwing around to like.
Oh yeah, we
It's
gotta
Dominion
wrap up
War
this
time.
war thing. Yeah.
And the way the timing worked out, we were able to watch the entire multi-part arc in one day.
That's
and then we were
amazing.
like, well, now we just got to keep going. So then we had like enthusiasm to finish it up, and so we wrapped it up. And we're gonna go to Voyager soon, but we're gonna detour to Expanse for a bit, and kick off season 1 of the Expanse.
Oh, you're expansing it up. That's right.
Just got myself a little 1 terabyte tiny bus-powered SSD, and I have that hooked up to a shield in the RV, so we have all of the Expanse on a local hard drive for the road trip. And I put all the kid shows on there too, so they can watch TV while we're going down the road.
Kind of nice. You know what you're watching. You don't have to fuss about like,
Yeah.
oh, what are we gonna do?
Yeah, so I got like 3 or 4 kids movies on there, a couple of kid shows on there, and they'll watch those back in the bedroom while we're going down the road. They can actually watch on the TV out in the living room too. But
Aw. Oh. Let me not delete the entire show doc. That's not what you need.
well, look at you using Stack Edit.
Yeah. Why not?
Boom.
Is there something wrong with
Boom.
that?
No, it's just not Cody, but it
Oh yeah. I mean, I should.
doesn't really matter, does it? Not
Well-
for just display.
Yeah. You're right though. Why am I doing it this way? We have a better thing.
All right.
So is there anything Hoopla wise right now? We've got. Yeah. You know, except it doesn't like some of what we. Stack Edit got like
Stack
a new
Edit,
version
yeah,
that I
yes,
don't like.
right. I agree.
You can still get to the old one, but which I'm gonna do now.
Hoopla. I mean, I think especially we have Chris. We have to mention the MacBook Pro keyboard.
God, I love it. I'm the Mac guy now. I'm the Mac guy, even though I'm like all in on my ThinkPad.
Nice. Just a heads up.
Lass of Linux Action Show with the Mac guy.
I am a little stoned on medication right now. So
How are you
if
feeling?
awful. It turns out what
Oh,
they said
no.
was the sinus infection was pneumonia.
Oh man.
So they had to give me completely different medication, which is making me a little like, if it just seems like I'm tired and like losing track, just jump in and be like, oh, I think you mean.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Yeah, the youngest came down with a stomach bug over the weekend,
Oh, jeez.
and then we got word from Ange that she got it. So
Oh.
yeah, we're like, oh gosh.
Well, that's what happened. My kid got sick. My wife got sick, and now it's my turn in the barrel.
We have a protocol now. We have a pretty good containment and cleanup protocol that seems to have worked pretty well for us, including like we wash the doorknobs and
Oh,
everything.
oh,
Like it's
yeah.
it's like a
Anything-
full-fledged.
Anything you might touch, right?
Man, I'm having
That's
a weird
not a bad
day today,
idea.
too.
Honestly, that's yeah.
I'm having one of those days. So I do this to myself every couple of months. I say, all right, well, let's go all in on the Pixel for a week and just live on the Pixel, right?
You're
And so
pixeling.
I switch over to Android Wear and I switch over to the Pixel. I haven't switched over to Android Wear yet. I have to charge it up. And I switch over to the Pixel. And I always tell myself, okay, just, throw your iPhone in your bag just in case. Well, I forgot. And of course, today's the day like that everything needs to two-factor on me. Like I need to do a Zoho expense two-factor. I need to log into my credit card two-factor. I need to everything's two-factor. And of course, it's all on the iPhone.
Ugh.
So I can't get into anything today. I'm getting text messages that are only on the iPhone because thank you, iMessage.
Don't you just love that?
Yeah.
iMessage.
Yeah. But man, I love the size of the small Pixel. It's just the perfect size for me.
How big is it?
It's narrow. It's narrow like the iPhone 5, but it's long like the iPhone 10. So it's
This is the weirdest description.
It's a narrower phone in the hand, so it's easier to hold. Like here, Wes, tell me, how would you describe that? Like it's
yeah, it is.
It's taller than an iPhone, but it's narrower than an iPhone. So it's your
So
hand
skinny.
Your fingers can reach across. Your thumb can reach from side to side easily. Like there's really almost no area I can't reach with my hand, which I really like. It's very comfortable in the hand. The things that it has really going for it is I actually think it has better speakers than the iPhone XS.
I'm really impressed with the speakers.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just listen to podcasts
Yep.
right on it.
And I think the camera in a lot of situations is better, especially night sight's an obvious one.
Yeah.
And then I think overall the overall form factor is superior. That's the areas I give the Pixel over the iPhone 10. So every time I switch back to it, I always like those things. And the Google Assistant speaker, like the microphone, is way
Right.
better than the Hey Siri on the iPhone. I can
Oh, really?
yeah. Like I have to if I want the iPhone to respond to Hey Siri, I have to very abruptly prompt it from across the room. But this, I can just mumble, "Okay, Google," and it picks right up. Cancel.
So, Wes, what is this fighting complexity thing? I didn't get a chance to look at it fully.
Oh, I mean, it was just an essay that was going around.
Ooh. I will read it for the next one. We'll put it in there.
Man, Wimpy's kind of getting me hyped on switching to Evolution
Whoa.
for email. Yeah.
Is that
I had,
right?
I love MailSpring, and MailSpring has this really sneaky read receipt system that's,
Yes, it does.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
However, it just lost its entire config on me today. The JSON file
Wait,
config just
disappeared.
corrupted.
Just out of there.
It's like, well, I can reset your entire config, or I can quit. I'm like,
I don't want either of those options.
so I went to my iPad to read my email this morning.
Sometimes that's the tech that works. All right, I'm gonna get myself some
Do it, man.
some water, and then I guess we can code a radio.
I'm going to hit a cough drop, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, you do.
Friday stream is nearly in the oven. A really good Friday stream this week. It was really fun. We've been playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and it went crazy sideways this week. Holy crap. Just leave it at that. Just leave it at that. Oh, I'm just hoping I don't end up with the stomach bug. So now I'm on watch. But I've gotten really good about trying not to get it and wash my hands and stuff. But you can never be perfect. Even once the kids get out of daycare, they then associate with kids that are in daycare, and they still get it. So it's an attack vector. So I'm a couple of weeks in, chat room, on the old Bridge keyboard. Thank you, sweetie. And I have got to say, this is a hearty recommend on the old Bridge keyboard. First of all, you'd straight up swear if you looked at this from across the room, the iPad is a laptop. You'd straight up just think it just looks like a frickin', like Apple made a laptop. And because it's machined in metal to match the color of the iPad Pro, so it's got the same texture and the same look. It's even got the same little divot for your fingers like the front of the MacBook Pro does. So just saying, a couple of weeks into using this now, just such a slam dunk. I will always. And
It feels really nice.
I've not had to recharge the battery yet.
Wait, really?
I still haven't.
How does that work?
And I use this thing every single day.
I mean, almost
Just
every
because
time.
the whole damn bottom's battery. In fact, people say that you can take USB-C to USB-C, it'll recharge the iPad too, and you'll still have keyboard battery.
That is incredible.
Isn't that great?
Wow.
I just can't recommend this enough. I used it on the flight recently because turns out, because you can, so the keyboard, it opens up like a clamshell laptop, but you can actually stand it end to end, which makes it perfect. You put that on the airplane tray, the seat tray, and so instead of looking down, I'm looking straight ahead,
You just like balancing it on the
on the
seat.
tray, and just the back on the seat just stayed fine, even in turbulence.
And then it's
'Cause
right
it's
at
heavy.
your head level.
It's heavy. That's the one downside, is it takes the totally lightweight, throw it in your bag iPad and makes it as heavy as a laptop because of that battery.
But the other side is it just feels sturdy.
It's super utilitarian too. It's like that keyboard has come in so handy.
All right.
Hello, welcome back. We missed you.
Oh, we missed.
Where
you
did
so
I put
much.
my? There it is. Never mind, I found it.
Hiding behind the monitor?
The wife fairy dropped these off for us.
It's just incredible.
I know.
Ooh,
All right.
Porting Redis to WebAssembly.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. We should. Excuse me. All right.
Well, all right then. Titles are started.
Nice. Okay.
Why's the old music there, Mr. Payne?
Is this not fighting?
I have a syntax question for you.
Syntax.
So you know how we had that Docker Compose YAML file that we put like all the different media services in?
Yeah.
What's the syntax when you just want to stand up one of those? So I appended that YAML file with a new container that I want to spin up. But I don't remember the syntax. It's like I thought it was Docker up and then the name.
Yeah, you can do like Docker Compose up.
It's Docker Compose
Yeah.
up.
Docker Compose.
I knew I was like one off. Dang it.
Docker broken on the Coda Radio show years ago.
God, I really am just loving this operating system independence that VMs and I'm
it's pretty
doing
incredible.
PCI pass through VMs and I'm doing containers at the same time. It's just a lot of fun. It's just
You have like 1,000 computers, right?
which makes me realize that Fuchsia is going to be a thing and it's going to take over the world.
As
when
long
I-
as
when
it
I-
runs Docker.
When I came to understand the process model a little bit better of Fuchsia, where they've basically designed everything is isolated, and then it's just a series of really super complicated IPC systems to communicate with everything. Even the file systems are just a process that then gets an interface that has like a server service that applications connect to. And they don't even run in the kernel. Same with GPU drivers. The GPU drivers are user space.
It is very modern, which is neat.
Everything's isolated from the get-go. Oh, man, Google's going to take over the world. Oh, and what's the programming language? Oh, it's Go. Oh, and what's the toolkit for the desktop? Oh, it's Flutter? Oh. So everybody's already getting hyped on that stuff as it is.
Ooh,
They're just going to swoop right in.
go full
I'm just gonna troll you a little bit. But I lost my tab. Hey, just leave that in the chat room.
Uh-oh. Setting up Docker. I know. And it's even a bigger deal with WSL2. With WSL2, it's legit Linux kernel, and you can really run real Docker containers. So it's even a bigger deal. And then imagine that on Windows Server.
Yeah. Although I'm still not drinking that Windows Server Kool-Aid. But
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
No. Did you see Microsoft officially said that like Linux is the vast majority of operating systems on Azure?
I did. Well, Microsoft is a premium Linux vendor.
Gotta get that.
Listen,
Microsoft
Chris,
Linux.
I've been called many things in the comments through the history of the show. Last week was the first time I was ever called a clown. Apparently, if you really want to twerk the Linux crowd, say Windows 10 should be considered a distro. What?
yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I've twerked. Yeah, I have too.
Yep.
Yeah, they don't like that.
Well,
I was looking at a guide for like compiling your own WSL kernel in the new version in 2.
You're shitting me.
Yeah,
That's
well,
even
they
an
had some
option?
like cool. And apparently it's just like under like the System32 library. There's some folder and it's got like a thing that says kernel. And you just it's the BZ image and you replace
So
it.
is getting it to work under WSL2 just a series of patches they've applied to the kernel?
Yeah, when they have it on GitHub, they have their Microsoft.
Could you, in
kernel.
theory, then get a 5.1 or a 5.2 kernel working possibly?
Yeah, I mean whatever you can get.
Do you
to work. I
understand
don't
how
know
much
what
of
the
a
limitations are.
badass segment that would be? That'd be such a badass segment. We should so do that. That would be so great.
I was seeing it was some guide to like try to get more stuff working. Like I don't know, whatever.
well
Try
think
to
about
bypass
this.
some
If you're like Penguin, right? With an E.
Yeah, we
not
gotcha.
the-
We
the-
gotcha.
Yeah. Now you're not dependent on what they come pre-installed. You just have your own kernel. They have a Debian version now anyway, or it is Debian. There's also an Ubuntu version, and that's it. And you have a fully packaged solution.
Could they start? Could from the store? Could they include their own kernels?
That I don't know. That's a
Well,
good
they could
question.
probably include some sort of
Script?
instructions, on how to run a script. I mean, it could just be a PowerShell script.
Or a
right?
package, I suppose. If it, this is something we should definitely explore on LUP too. Is this stuff? Anyways, we should probably get started.
Yeah,
but
we
that's
should. But you're right.
man,
That's what I was
fascinating.
thinking. Yeah, right.
Fascinating stuff. It's an interesting area.
It's
I
making
feel
me
like
want to hack on Windows again almost, and that's a weird
I said it the
feeling.
other day. I feel like Windows, Mac OS, and Linux are all way more interesting than they have been recently. Like there was kind of a lull in the desktops for a while, and now all the three major operating systems are piquing my interest. It's been a decade since I've given a shit about what Windows is doing, and Mac OS, I was about to write the whole damn platform off until they started making pro products again.
Boom.
All right,
we
we
should
got
save it for the show.
Yeah,
though.
I know.
We
There's
got to
like a
get
lot here.
recording. We got to get going.
Okay.
Mike, are you ready with the recorder over there on your end?
Let's time it out, and then I'll be ready.
All right. I'll do a 3, 2, 1 record.
Yep.
3, 2, 1 record.
Record.
Nice. And away
dumb-
we go. Let's check.
Dumb
this.
question. It says
Oh my
MME.
God. MME. What?
Yeah, what the hell is that?
Where do you see that?
Right under the microphone in Audacity.
MME. Do you see levels and do you see waveform?
I
when
see
you talk?
levels and everything. I just don't. Is MME a bad format? It's not wave.
It's a good. Oh.
I thought usually it says wave.
I'm trying to open it up here. See, I think I got it on this machine.
And it won't let me change it because it's actively recording.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might
Microsoft.
as well. We can stop and
Yeah,
start
well,
again.
yeah.
That's easy enough.
Yeah,
Let's
let's
just
be
stop it.
safe.
All right.
Reaper's great. I can just delete
All right.
all those
I
right
know.
now.
I
Oh,
know. Reaper's
So my
so good.
choices are MME, Windows Direct Sound, and Windows. I guess it's always MME actually.
Maybe that's the sound device type.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. So we should resync.
Okay.
I'll delete this.
No worries.
Ready?
Mike doesn't know how to work audio equipment yet.
No, that's
it's only been 7
It's
years.
an arcane art at times.
Well, especially that application.
Ooh, Audacity.
All right.
So
All right,
useful.
let's
and
do it.
So non-functional. All right. 3, 2, 1. Record.
Record.
You want to do a count to there, Mr.
Yeah.
Green?
All right. Let's do up this time. So 1, 2, 3, and then y'all say 4 with me.
I like that.
1, 2, 3,
4.
4.
That's not too bad, actually.
Yeah, we should do a little room though too, since
Oh,
we got
yeah.
the 2 mics. 2 mics. No, I mean 2 microphones.
Yeah, I think the one mic is. I mean, that's almost. We're almost bursting at the seams with that mic.
Are you ready for silence?
Yeah, are you ready over there, Mr. Dominic?
Let's do it.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Woo!
Okay.
Nicely done. That was some good silence, guys.
That was good silence.
It was almost kind of healing a little bit. I
I
feel
was-
better now.
Joe and I were trying to do silence yesterday for Lan, and his neighbor started running their water, and there was just so much background noise.
Someone in my building.
Like it
is-
happens to
oh,
Joe too.
yeah, right? It's always the worst time. For me, it's always like somehow I've like just had something to drink. I have like water while with the show, and then right, or like your stomach just makes like a tiny noise, and you're like, oh, that's on the recording.
Joe calls those stomach farts.
Stomach farts. Oh, that's so good. All right, let's see here. We got some music. Let's test that out. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Look at you with the fade out.
I've been wanting to
Nice.
actually use that. I mean, it's a nice feature. All right, so 365. Then what's the 8th today?
Yeah. Yeah.
Time flies. That's crazy. Wasn't it just the 4th?
That's crazy.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
I still hear people launching fireworks.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get Mike started on
Mhm.
fireworks though. Let's not.
Yeah. Yeah. I hate. Yeah.
Let's get going.
Let's not do that.
All right, you ready over there, Mr. Dominic?
I am. Yeah.
This is Coda Radio, episode 365 for July. Nope. Gonna say June.
Yeah, you did. It is July. You were right.
I know.
But you felt like June.
I felt like June.
I know.
Yeah,
It's
see,
like
I'm
that
all
doesn't seem
confused.
right.
All right, one more time.
I just feel like a June bride.
I think that's a clip there.
If we
Drew.
had a yeah,
You should have caught that one. Yeah.
I need that.
This is Coda Radio, episode 365 for July 8th, 2019. Hello and welcome to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show that takes a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. My name is Wes, and I'm very pleased to be joined by that firecracking Floridian who's had one too many fireworks this time around, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hi, Mike.
Get off my lawn!
I know. I transitioned from being a fun-loving lad in my youth who liked blowing things up, frankly.
Yeah.
And now I'm a dog owner, so it's just about the worst thing in the world.
Exactly.
I think we've got one other person who snuck in the nick of time. Mr. Chris Fisher. Hello, Chris.
Hey guys, thanks for having me back.
Oh, we wouldn't be without you.
I kind of am a little relieved that I'm not the only one. I had the same transition. Like this year, I was like, oh, can we just not?
It's just, it's kind of a futz. I prefer just the professional shows. You know, you can go there if you want to see it.
Yeah.
It's usually away from most of the housing.
I could even go with another compromise. How about we just all agree from like 8 p.m. to midnight, you have that on the 4th of July. And we'll just all prepare for that. It's like the day before, and today we're recording on the 8th, and my neighbors are still setting off fireworks.
Still going strong.
I'm kind of like, okay, how about we just compromise, meet somewhere in the middle here? That's all.
You know,
I'm such an old man.
I looked up how to do some CSS fireworks, so that's another tech-powered solution. Just
Listen.
don't blow anything up. Use the computer.
I just wanted to go out to the neighborhood kids and say, this is the blink tag. Knock yourselves out.
You know what? It is the real-life version of the blink tag, isn't it?
It really is, right?
Good call. I think that's exactly it. Okay, now, I feel a little affronted here because every time I come on the show, you guys put Mac News stories in the doc, and I didn't even do anything. I didn't do any of this. None of this is my doing.
I will back you up on this. It just
Okay.
happens, and we've talked about it
It was
enough.
Joe.
We want to follow up on stories that we cover, right? It just makes sense. It's our
Yeah.
instinct.
I think Alan, Jude, and Joe are conspiring against me to get the audience to think that I'm the Mac guy on the show. Is what it is. And you guys are just complicit.
Despite overseeing the Linuxification, that's hard to say, but regardless, you made that happen here in the studio, right? I mean, there's hardly a Mac to be seen.
I prefer the term freeing the studio, Wes.
Oh, free in the studio.
Oh, God.
It was more about philosophy than functionality.
Oh,
Bird.
God.
Nice. Wow, I am really impressed how you turned that around on me. Dang it. Okay, well, yeah, so I think the big hoopla story that kind of leads into this thing that I was sort of implying is, it's now, as you guys talked about, on the record that Johnny Ive is officially on the way out.
See ya.
B, we've had that Wall Street Journal article that said that Cook wasn't involved, and then we had Tim Cook make this super strong
Oh, yeah. That
response.
was a little awkward.
And now there is what seems to me, at least having followed this for a while, so this is where I get this kind of feeling, is a very intentionally leaked story. Because now we have multiple sources that are claiming that the new MacBook Pro later this year will have a totally new keyboard mechanism. And when you start seeing these kinds of leaks, and I'm curious to know Mike's take on this, it kind of feels like an intentional leak by Apple to set a narrative after this Ive announcement.
Wait. Are you suggesting that they would conveniently try to imply that the crappy keyboard that was way too thin to be useful was the responsibility of a very controversial and famous designer who that now he's leaving, we can have a good keyboard? Is that what you're trying to say?
I mean, it kind of seems that way, Mike. It kind of seems that way.
And wasn't it interesting how Tim Cook, very Clark Kent-esque, flew around the media saying, I make all these decisions.
Yeah.
And now we have a good keyboard. Yeah, I mean, this is some Floridian gator bacon. I don't think Johnny Ive cares. I think he's a knight and rich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. I
So,
mean, he
sure.
comes out of this fine in every situation.
Yeah. But if anybody's ever shipped a product, particularly physical products, there's just no way this just happened, right?
Oh, yeah, right. I mean, it's got to be in the works
Months.
for a long time.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt. I think that the Ive transition has been in the works since Apple Park wrapped up. That's my estimation. Yeah, if you look back at some of the way they've been communicating about Ive's role and a promotion that he got around then and all of that, it kind of all equals to the beginning of a transition. And I would say there was no winning here for Apple, because if Tim Cook was hyper involved and trying to be involved in every single design decision, something tells me Johnny Ive wouldn't like that either.
Yeah, right.
So it's either he's not involved enough or he's too involved. And I don't think there was ever going to be a happy medium because just my sense of the personality types at work here.
Well, yeah, and Apple's trying to combat the narrative that I perhaps way too hard hit last week that, Tim Cook really is effectively an operations guy, right? Because, I don't know why. We've all three of us talked about this for a long time on different shows in this show, but for some reason the big tech companies love the idea of the CEO as like the god king coming down and
Right.
You know,
Not
The
just,
tyrant,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
I think it's silly. Like, I would actually be more impressed if they came down and said, "My name's Tim Cook. I am one of the best operations people in the world. So I just hired the best programmers and designers to do that for me." Right? Like, but they can't say that. So
I don't know. That's what I would say. It seems like a pretty reasonable approach.
and how other industries do it, right? I mean, you're
the
there to
ones-
operate the business.
The ones that aren't media darling industries.
Right. Although, I mean, Apple does things a little differently, right? And their history has been kind of written by these big design changes.
Well,
it was not business as usual.
I think we also have to be fair. They're sort of the architect of the celebrity CEO for the tech industry.
Yes.
They're not. He's not the first celebrity CEO. I mean, hello Edison, but
hello, Mark Shuttleworth.
Yeah, but for that Silicon Valley area, he sort of is the architect, whatever I'm trying to say. So
We're
I mean,
talking about
it's-
Ken Metcalf, right?
It's sort of fair. No, of course not. I'm talking about Wozniak. It seems only kind of fair that people still view them in that light, but it's not the reality of a company at their scale. Like when you look at the people on the team, like Craig Federighi, and Phil Schiller, and I would have probably cited Ive before.
Mm-hmm.
They seem like exceptionally talented individuals who have been at the company for a very long time. And recently they've been featured more and more on podcasts. So I've actually gotten a chance to hear them in a less structured, less promotional setting. And they're very intelligent individuals. I don't know if you've had that same assessment, Mike, but it seems like for example, Craig Federighi really knows his shit.
Of course, right? I mean, for all our trolling on this show, which, by the way, is supposed to be entertainment too, right? You don't become a director of insert department here at Apple without being a very smart, very capable person.
Yeah.
That was too nice.
Yeah, I was.
I just expected some further vitriol there.
No.
but I guess.
All right. So to the topic on point here that really matters to the audience is, depending on who you follow, some people would argue that the MacBook Pro is one of the premier developer platforms, especially if you're in Xcode. It's one of your only options, really, if you want to be a mobile developer.
And it's
Or
like
if you
still
want to do
kind of
HomePod
the,
development.
still
Yeah, right.
now, if you go work for some big, some tech company, more than likely you're getting a MacBook, right, on your first day.
So the potential ramifications here are a new MacBook Pro with a larger screen that is, let's just say in theory for the sake of this conversation, designed by that new, or help design, led by that new Pro team. The same team that had influence on the iMac Pro, the new Mac Mini, and the Mac Pro. Let's say they've also been involved in a Mac Pro for professionals,
Ooh.
like the King Mac Pro. They're going to have to call it, they can't call it like Mac Pro Plus or whatever. Maybe they will.
Is that like a Mac Pro Pro? Wait.
Maybe they'll call it, what do they call the, is it X, what do they call the larger iPhone? Is it just Plus still? Or is
XL.
it
It's XL.
Maybe they'll call it the MacBook
Yeah.
XL. I mean, I don't know.
I could see it, yeah.
Or they'll just call it the MacBook 16-inch, and it'll just be implied that the 16-inch version is
That's
more
the
powerful.
workhorse.
Right. And the rumor here is that it switches to, actually, the rumor is they're going to start with a MacBook Air. But I just like, for the purposes of conversation, let's say they launch a MacBook Pro, larger screen. This one even has an SD card reader. It's got a new keyboard. It's still all USB-C, but it's got lots of USB-C. They're all Thunderbolt 3 ports. It's got this bigger screen. It's got a great keyboard. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say it's like the T480's keyboard. It's quite nice.
Okay.
Have they solved the problem? Is the criticism, or is all the criticism done? Is the conversation dead at that point?
Or is there more? Is there
Well-
like a software layer, right? I mean, you've got Brew there. You're probably developing for Linux, at least if you're doing the enterprise side of things. Like,
Sure.
Hmm.
I mean, it depends on what you mean, right? Are you defining the problem as like the 20-something% failure rate? Because, yeah, if you fix that, you fix that.
Well,
right? That's
also,
a
it's
kind
just
of-
that they're extremely uncomfortable to type on, especially when you're typing a lot. At least for me, maybe because I'm an old typist. I mean, I've
Oh,
been
they
typing
hurt.
Yeah,
oh, no,
hurt.
it hurts. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just thinking if they could make it a competitive product like that again, they may solve the criticism. Now, ironically, this particular rumor that we have linked in the show notes is about the MacBook Air, and it suggests that the 16 inch
sense.
the 16 inch won't even get the keyboard this year. Is what it suggests. The 16 inch that hasn't even been announced yet.
I mean,
yeah.
my issue as a buyer of these devices has always been that this is your most expensive laptop, and it is also your most unreliable.
Unreliable.
Well, no, it's not. This is not me asserting this, right? This is people have not Consumer Reports. Who's the is it Anantech? Who does the what they think the return rates and defect rates are on all the Apple products?
Oh, the people
it
who
is
try to-
20
yeah.
something. Yeah, it is 20-something%, and for a laptop that is minimum going to be $2,000 unless you're buying a base model, and probably for someone who has heavier needs, $3,000. I don't know. Even if it's just 21%, right? That's not an acceptable failure rate. In
Well,
my
that would
opinion.
be no. That would be if that's true. If that number's true, that would be. I mean, there's no way it could be that high.
Well, I mean, the Wall Street Journal did an entire piece on it, right? It's not. This isn't.
I mean, another
crazy-
crazy. I agree with
Yeah.
you there, and they should be a lot better. I feel like I am that guy who always says, "Oh, the solution to Android's shortcomings is just to flash it with Lineage." I'm going to be that guy for a moment, but
Lay it on us.
Apple seems to be moving in the direction of supporting macOS more and more under virtualization, to the extent that they're even adding VirtIO drivers to
Isn't that interesting?
not even just to Catalina, but they're bringing those VirtIO drivers to what's the current version of macOS?
Mojave?
Yes, they're bringing them to Mojave even in the latest releases of Mojave.
Wow.
Now, these VirtIO drivers are what allow an operating system to have drivers that are aware it's being virtualized, and then it has better performance because it can,
It's optimized for virtualization.
it communicates intelligently with the hypervisor, and that's not an accident. Like those don't just accidentally get.
Whoopsie, VirtIO.
Mm-hmm. And Windows 10 also works really great under virtualization, and when you use an AMD card with PCI pass-through, you can have full GPU acceleration for both of these. You can't do it at the same time, but you can load a VM and have full GPU pass-through for either OS on any hardware you want that supports virtualization.
Which is a lot these days.
And I think it's time. We were just having a pre-show conversation. Like we have here at the studio on our and also on our VPSs, we have divorced, as many of you probably have, the applications from the operating system. Well, now we can divorce the operating system from the hardware. It's all available to us. It just takes a little extra setup, but you do it once, right?
You do it once, and then you've got it all configured and ready to go, right?
So, if you are someone like me who mostly is now developing server-side software, and frankly some Windows desktop, but mostly server-side running on Ubuntu, Linux, or SUSE, why would I not just VM macOS Catalina for when I need it and literally buy the nicest laptop with the best eGPU that I could possibly afford?
Yeah.
Would you spend most of your time there? Would you be switching around? Because you still got your question of, where are you
It's
spending?
not super portable. That's the biggest downside I find.
Yeah.
However, there are ways to do, and this is an area I don't really know much about, but on modern, like our laptops, your laptop right there, supports virtualizing the GPU. So you can actually carve out your Intel
Right.
GPU as a dedicated GPU to the VMs all in that laptop. You just only have
Yeah, but I
Intel
thought
graphics.
There's a bunch of caveats with that, I thought. Isn't it like dependent on which, it doesn't matter really, but which one you have and which kind of virtualization?
Yeah, all this stuff is pretty hardware specific, and you've got to know
Yeah.
which flags to look through and match up the CPU and the motherboard and
Yeah.
how all that works.
Like I say, it takes a little bit of work, but then you have sort of the stability and reliability of virtualization under those operating systems too. So then you gain things like snapshots before an update, before all those kinds of things. So you actually bring a level of stability to your development environment that you don't have when it's running on native hardware. Like I said, at the top of this, I'm going to be the guy that says solve all your Android problems by running Lineage. Like it's not really an option for everybody, but I think maybe it's more of an option than people realize. Because I'm on a laptop. I didn't think it was possible,
Right.
and it's game changer.
Especially if, like your mic, right? Maybe you just need to run it as a build server for Xcode or something. You just need to get stuff signed and through there, and otherwise you can develop wherever you want.
I guess what it really comes down to is the Macintosh hardware and the Mac OS operating system. Is it important to you that you are in that ecosystem and that maybe is it a statement? Is it a status symbol product, Or is the Mac OS and its applications simply a tool in which you use to get your job done? And maybe, depending on what answer you have for that, maybe that tells you what route to take.
Now, can I run the ball forward about 5 years though?
Well, let's do it.
This all makes sense and this all works because Windows, Mac OS, and Linux are all effectively Intel systems, right? They're x86.
Yeah,
x64.
we're all running on the same chips.
What happens when Uncle Tim throws down the gauntlet and says, "And ARM"? That comes a lot harder, right? The virtualization.
I think everything changes unless
Yeah.
there's ARM hardware out there that can. Yeah, I think everything changes. But at that point too, you got to figure a lot of your application workflow would change too. And you may actually want an x86 version of Mac OS around for compatibility reasons for a really long time. And
Oh yeah, that
again, virtualization would really be a good use case there.
that would be a fascinating transition.
Yeah, it will be. And
It's going to be painful, I think, for a lot of people.
and maybe it's another reason not to invest in
Buying that one.
multi-$1,000 Mac products when they could be at the end of a line.
$47,000 Mac Pro.
Right. I mean, look at that, right? I mean, even if you could come up with another screen that is still high resolution that can connect to that thing, and there are not a lot of options there, you're still looking at probably a base $6,000 out the door for the machine once you get it configured, even adequately. Or you could put all of that money into a custom build PC or a machine you buy that could get you a lot more, and then you virtualize, and that could get you stability in a way you hadn't really considered before. And the trend line for Mac OS has been to support virtualization more and more. It started like 5 years ago with licensing changes, and the support for it has just accelerated since then.
I mean, not to troll, but what if you could have a userland with like a high software compatibility and a desktop environment used by millions and a kernel from a different OS that you can work natively in?
You were really talking up. You kind of trolled last week. I am curious though, because you mentioned you were doing VS Code and having that nice integration. I mean, how serious are you? Are you actually liking it that much? Is it working for your needs? Do you feel like you're effectively targeting Linux this way?
I have deployed software. I have built binaries, a few of them that I've needed. Now, we're mostly talking about server-side software I'm developing, so it's,
Of course.
It's been perfectly fine. The only, and this is dumb, is that like the WSL stuff is very being worked on. I'm also using that new fancy terminal.
I have not.
Which,
tried
thanks
that
to
yet.
listener Sean McBride, gave me some pointers on how to set that up because the documentation's not great yet. I mean, as far as doing, doing Ruby and doing some .NET Core, it's just fine. I am interested to see what happens. Like I have a Qt project that I just need to pull down and take a look at something for somebody. What happens if I try to run that in WSL? I think the answer is it's just going to fail. But I have to say, if you are a web developer who also needs to touch, it's almost the old Microsoft argument, right? The old MacBook argument. If you are a web developer who occasionally needs like Xcode for like signing a Cordova or a PhoneGap app, this is great, right? I do have Windows applications in the field, in the market, and the vast majority of the software I write is being deployed, like I said, to SUSE and Ubuntu servers. So that's don't even get me started.
I know. We don't want to disparage. Legitimately though, real talk. What about the paper cuts of running Windows? Like the fact that the start menu's got shit all over it, the fact that the Windows updates process takes a decade, the fact that it's a mismatch of UI, all those things.
So, okay, I'm waiting on writing the review of this, but the experiences. I am intentionally using hardware that is 100% Linux compatible, just in case I want to slap Pop! OS or Elementary or something on this.
Yeah, okay.
It is amazing to me how unpleasant the Windows kind of just setting up your machine experience still is these days.
Yeah.
Like I had to delete Candy Crush. That's ridiculous to me.
Yeah, or how fiddly you have to get with the power saving settings and the update settings. It's not hard. It's lots of fiddly settings that you spend a lot of time overall changing.
It's like using plasma.
It's kind of fair in a way, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all going to be about trade-offs, right? Like I know plenty of people who I've tried to evangelize desktop Linux to, who are Mac people, and they're like, "Are you kidding me?" Right? Like I would never do that. You know, I would say that if you're a comfortable desktop Linux user, are you probably going to switch to Windows 10? Not unless you already needed Windows, right? Am I 100% on Windows 10? I am for now. Do I think it will last? Well, it used to be the case, and this is Mike's old man hat. The last time I seriously ran Windows, other than for like a 4-month job, was I think it was Windows. Oh God, I don't even know the 8. Windows 8. It has been my experience that Windows machines tend to slow down after a while.
Oh yeah, the Windows slowdown creep. We all know that.
Yeah, so if that starts to happen, I will probably get frustrated. You know how I get, and like, you know, pour a beer into it or something. But I don't. I want to be careful how I phrase this. I don't think the Linux community should view WSL as a threat. I really actually think it's an opportunity, right? It is a sign that Linux is won. Now, maybe it's bad if you happen to be a GNOME developer, right?
Right.
Or the elementary OS team or Pop OS team.
You know what, Mike, as you're talking about this, you know what I realize is this is, it is a sign of success, just like wine was a sign of success for Windows.
Yeah. People want it, right? That's why Microsoft's investing real time and energy and dev hours into it.
Okay, can I come at this from another angle then? So,
Please.
what deficiency is Windows 10 as a desktop addressing that you have found, say, in a day-to-day Pop OS or modern Ubuntu install?
Well, that's an unfair question, right? Because I have 4 Windows applications currently in the field. So the deficiency is...
No, I mean, aside from that, like I'm wondering, is application compatibility truly a differentiator for you at this point? Is there things that Windows 10 is doing better that make you think, gosh, even when I'm not managing Windows applications that I'm shipping, there's reasons to stay here?
So actually, that is a great question. It turns out that my software application compatibility, other than working on these native Windows apps, is better on Windows and Linux than it is on Mac. Because anything I wanted to use, whether it be entertainment or work, there is either a Linux equivalency, right? Or indeed it's a Linux tool that I couldn't use on Windows before.
Oh, yeah.
Or that I had to install via Homebrew for Mac.
Huh.
Or if it's a game, it can run near natively with
Right.
Lutris on Linux. On Mac, I actually have, like, for instance, I am addicted to Magic the Gathering Arena. Great game. It's, for those who know, it's in fact a former host here, Jason, used to play it all the time, right? That ran flawlessly on Pop OS.
Right.
Doesn't run at all on
Nope.
Mac
Nope.
without some pretty deep wine hackery.
Same thing with my MMO of choice, Star Trek Online. I play it.
Oh, dude!
I play it on Linux. In fact, I don't play it at all under Windows, and you can't even get it to run on Mac OS, even with crossover and wine and all of those things. It's just not happening on Mac OS.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, and I know this is kind of a sideways way to answer your question. This experience has shown me, when I eventually settle down again, I'm probably going to distro hop a little on Linux or stick with Windows 10, or probably dual boot. But Mac, you know what? At this point in 2019, I really don't think I don't think you should need to compromise with your operating system, which I know sounds like, not nice, but Pop OS is really nice. Elementary is really nice, right? Ubuntu is nice.
No, I follow you. This is the end result of Linux essentially becoming, in a way, a runtime, and then, like I just said earlier, divorcing the applications from the operating system, or making it possible to run Windows applications on Linux and Linux application on Windows. All of a sudden, the desktop, assuming you're not subscribed to any particular philosophy, is a lot more fluid, and it matters in some ways a lot less even.
Right. I mean, like, Mac added all that, Xhive stuff just to partially to help facilitate running Docker containers and a VM there.
Yep. I've run Docker on Mac OS, and it runs just fine. It's got there's a nice GUI for it and everything. It's the craziest thing.
GUI on Linux. Yeah, right.
It's crazy.
Comes with Docker Compose right there.
Yeah. I know. So I guess my point is that it's just becoming less and less relevant. Less and less. And then when you containerize the applications up in Flatpaks or Snaps, it's at a whole nother level. Huh. Well,
That's fascinating.
that is fascinating.
Well, let me ask you. I know we're harping on this, but you guys are. I mean, would it be wrong for me to call you freedom terrorists?
Wow.
I would think yes.
Sort of like more like it's more like a love and peace kind of vibe going on, less of like a Greenpeace, bomb something going on.
Okay, can I State Department spin that then?
Yeah.
You're freedom fighters.
Warriors, sure.
It's less
Revolutionaries.
aggressive though, but we're on the path to righteousness.
We're freedom recommenders.
But don't you feel?
Have you heard
kidding
about
aside.
freedom?
Do you have a moment?
Are you free? Wait, are you Freedom Jehovah's Witnesses? Is that what? I mean, don't you guys feel that you like? Honestly, JB should just be taking a victory lap here, right? You won.
We may have bet on the right horse, I suppose. Although what JB originally sought out to be was really a podcast network about the desktop of Linux, which is not really.
Well, never mind.
Yeah. But things change and evolve, and the network has changed and evolved, and we still cover that probably disproportionately to the actual market size. But it's what we're all into. And we are very lucky that more and more of the workloads have come to Linux. So that has been very fortunate because people want to know what's going on with it now.
Yeah, there's a certain spirit of it, I think, that's distilled in the desktop. I mean, in some ways it is separate, but many of the communities that make both software commingle.
Well, I would say there's honor in fighting a losing battle. And speaking of losing battles, Wes, how's that Objective-C?
Oh, Mike, I knew you were going to ask about this.
I love these challenges so much.
Ooh, yeah, okay. So you sent me on a very different path to the world of Objective-C. And, okay, so I'll be honest, I didn't go down the complicated route of setting up a Mac OS VM. Now, that might be something worth trying. Yeah, right. That may be something worth trying in the future, but you encouraged me to explore what other options existed. And it's been really interesting. I mean, I'm interested in programming languages, and Objective-C kind of has some, it's been around for a long time, so it's got some interesting origins, especially the connection to Smalltalk. But because I was using the GNU step environment, it kind of felt like a history lesson. It felt like I was studying a dead language in some ways.
The GNU step. I looked into. If you want to get a modern GNU step live environment, I believe it was last updated in 2017. Yeah, I looked into that.
It's packaged up like the compiler and the runtimes and stuff, packaged up in Debian, no problem. So I was able to pull those down. Got a couple things compiling. I did Hello World, and as Mike asked, I was playing around with some of the message passing stuff, which is, honestly, I can see why Mike loves Objective-C. Now, for me, it was kind of a low level, going back to a little lower level of software in a little bit.
Well, it is what, 30 years old, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But comparing it to C++, as was kind of done at the time, it's remarkably simple. So, even for needing to have a bunch of sort of inherent complexity, because it is lower level, it is targeting sort of complicated environments and doing so in an older style and running closer to the metal, it's still surprisingly civilized, I would say. And would you agree with me, Mike? Is that kind of what you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm tearing up because it warms my heart that it's 2019 and I somehow got someone to do Objective-C.
I find it kind of ironic even that it became like popular because of the iPhone, which is such a modern device,
weird.
And this is such a
yeah.
It's that whole story, and the fact, and then Java on Android. It's such a wow.
Those are not. It's not how I would have predicted it going.
Right, you wouldn't think so.
All
right.
So it's interesting because I didn't say anything to you while you were doing it. I did not expect you to go the GNU step route because that's actually the harder path.
You could have been helping me this whole time, Mr. Dominic.
Well, the option was also set up a Mac VM, which I don't know how hard or easy that, right? So
honestly, I do kind of want to. I need one of those anyway. Not need, but it would be fun to have. I've Hackintoshed in the past. So
when I get mine finalized,
oh yeah,
I'll hook you up.
Yeah. So I agree with everything you said, and I would even wonder if you could expound more on it felt like going back in time, because I actually think Objective-C is a language that is unabashedly from the early 90s. And I know it was older than that, but really that's when, yes, there were updates later on when the iPhone came out, but its core, its concepts, the way it thinks about programming, right? Its direct ancestor is Smalltalk, right? It's like Smalltalk and C++, kind of. Mm-hmm. But it says that we are object-oriented. but we are a small language, right? I mean, how did you feel about just the size of the language?
Yeah, it doesn't, it's not super weighed down by a ton of stuff. And obviously, you get more of that if you're targeting, the Mac ecosystem and using a bunch of their libraries on top. But yeah, C was, I think, the first programming language that you could really count if we don't count Visual Basic 6, which I don't think we should. So it was kind of nice.
What about Real Basic?
The
Heyo.
half counts. So it did, it was kind of nice. All of my more recent, low level experiments have been playing around with Rust, or I have done some C++ a few years ago, and I don't have a strong desire to go back. I think I could handle Objective-C.
Interesting.
I mean, these days, it would probably be Swift, but it was an interesting contrast because using the message passing system, and some of the inheritance from Smalltalk, even for being a low level compiled language, it's surprisingly dynamic. And I think you miss out on a lot of that, for better and for worse. I mean, there are lots of good things about the extra, staticness and safety of Swift, but it's an interesting throwback, or, has such a unique place in the landscape of programming language design. And I think it's interesting how popular it got from kind of obscure origins.
I have a couple questions for you. So the second question I'll do first.
What now?
How cool is it that you can go back in time with some of this stuff, and not GNU Step is fairly well preserved, but not everything is. We need to do better at preserving these things and having ways to stand these up.
Yeah,
do you have
you're
thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I know with Smalltalk, there's similar things where you can get some of the images and get them to run, and there's even, I forget the name of it, but there's some modern distributions of it. It is interesting, though, because you have different eras of computing, and you can contrast that with, say, looking back at Android versions, which is impossible because so much of it is online that you just can't really preserve that environment. Mm-hmm. So it's nice when you have some of these older languages because they just weren't connected systems, right? It's all standalone. It just exists as long as you have the source material, and because it was added as part of the GNU project, that's free, so it's preserved.
It would be so cool if there was some archive.org style project that would create maybe a Linux environment VM snapshot of something in time, and then make it available, and you could just start up the entire environment from that time or something.
Maybe a little interactive thing you could go through and maybe explore what made that language unique, or explore that environment.
Okay, so my first question was, as somebody who's got no experience at this, object-oriented seems like it would get very complex after a while. Am I wrong? It seems like for something simple, no problem, you could keep the whole thing in your head. But you start to get to something that's fairly even somewhat complicated, it seems like it would just become a massive thing to keep track of that you wouldn't be able to keep it all in your head.
That's why FP exists.
What is FP?
Yeah, it sounds like you should stay tuned for the next episode of Coder Radio, Chris, because
okay.
We're going to have a little conversation about functional programming and object-oriented programming.
Ooh, nice tease.
And how they fit together, and maybe how to combine the paradigms a bit.
I like that. Good. Hey guys, good idea.
Well played. Well played.
Interestingly, I think Objective-C is kind of neat because, again, comparing it to C++, the message passing style it just feels a little simpler. So I can see that aiding. And then there's just lots of, you get design patterns and paradigms that one applies for certain abstractions to try to, detangle some of that mess.
So do you think for a junior developer, there would be any value in saying, you know what, just for a weekend, stand up a GNU Step environment on your Arch distro, because that's what you all seem to run, and, go back in time?
No, man, I got Debian 10 on here.
I'm Fedora over here.
Oh, Debian. Oh, you know what? You're on the cutting edge, man. Debian.
Debian 10 just came out this weekend.
I know. See, damn it, they got me again.
That's amazing.
Hey, I'm running Windows. Come on.
I would say if they're interested in doing iOS development, yeah, maybe. It could be interesting from that perspective as a way to get the toe in the water. If you're just interested from the historical language stuff, maybe it's better to just play with Smalltalk directly.
Interesting. Okay.
But I mean, it's easy enough. So I wouldn't dissuade someone from doing it. I certainly enjoyed it. And it might be worthwhile. I mean, I guess even with Swift, it's good to know a little Objective-C, right? just enough to read it, let's say.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's definitely the case. Yeah. Yeah, because that's not going away anytime soon. You're working on a project that's been around for a little bit.
ARM transition.
I was also pretty
Okay.
impressed with. It was a stark reminder of the weird history Apple's had with the open source community and some of the, the license battles and the transition away from GPL software as they distribute it, and LLVM and its rise to fame. Like all of that happens in the Objective-C history as well, right? It's part and
Yep.
parcel of that. So it's really kind of interesting to. It's tied to Apple's history, so it's fun to look at that way too.
It's the same reason you can't have a good version of Bash on Mac.
All right. Well, do we know what Mike's challenge is going to be?
Oh,
no.
Yes, we do.
Now, just a little public service announcement. Next week's episode, because of travel, will be pre-recorded. So the challenge will be taking a week off. So
That's
there'll be a
right.
break there
Yeah,
because,
Mike's gonna get a little extra time.
we're about to record next week's episode in just a little bit. Oh, I won't be here, but they are.
Yeah, actually, I think it's going to fit in just fine. As you'll see, this is perhaps overdue, but Mike, you got me with Objective-C, so I'm gonna give you something close to my own heart. Clojure is your choice this week.
Fair enough. I did this to myself. Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you want me to give you some starting resources, or should I leave you to fend in the fields of Google?
You know what? Leave me in the woods because I want to see like someone who doesn't know Clojure. Where do they go?
Okay, it's
brave.
I'm going to be interested to see what you find.
You might come across to West Payne Talk if you look hard enough.
Ooh, now I'll be looking for it.
I love it. You both held on to these particular choices much longer than I expected. Kept
all
your powder
about-
dry for a while.
It's all about the slow play.
We'll see if this is the peak now. Now you're just gonna be throwing random things at each other. Well,
Now we're gonna go for the most annoying languages possible after this. I think. How
Yeah.
about the lolscat language? No.
Oh yeah, brainfuck could be included as well.
Oh,
That's
man.
a classic.
oh man,
Wonderful.
great. Guys, I always appreciate letting me hang out for a bit. It's always nice.
Oh, it's fun. Thank you for joining us.
Oh no, you quit it. Did you know that we have a great website where people can get all kinds of resources? I think it's coder.show.
Coder.show. You can
Mention
find our RSS feed. You can find ways to contact us, and you can find the whole back catalog of Coder Radio episodes. And there's a whole bunch of them. So go start listening.
We should take a moment too, Mike. If you got things going on, anything you want to mention or send the listeners, take a moment because we got a space right here just for you to let them know about it.
Oh, beautiful. Check out @Tumanuko on Twitter and check out themadbotter.com. We're going to have some cool stuff in about, I guess since we're doing a time delay, 4 weeks.
Oh.
It's better just to follow and see what happens over
Then
there.
you know, yeah. But you can always bookmark it. Just check back in a couple of weeks.
Easily done.
I'll plug, let's see, I'll plug @ChrisLAS. And also, I'm going to plug User Air. Such a good show. That is
Yes.
such a good show. Go check out the most recent episode, and then if you like it, go check out the back catalog. But oh man, such a good show. So we don't give it enough attention.
It's great, yeah. And it's a fun diversion. It's a little different than a lot of the other shows on the network. So if you're tired of hearing about tech news, go get some real life news.
Error.show for that.
I'm on Twitter too. I'm @WesPayne.
What?
And
Really?
I'm gonna go plug your show, Linux Action News.
Oh,
I really enjoyed
thanks.
this week's episode, especially your well-reasoned breakdown of this whole DNS over HTTPS.
Oh,
debacle
Mozilla's an
and
internet
evil Mozilla.
yeah.
Something tells me we're gonna talk more about this topic.
Yeah. Internet the Mozilla villain is really all kind of just way out there, and so it really all comes down to something that you wouldn't expect. And I think people are like now realizing there's something kind of big coming down the pipe too. Yeah, that was a fascinating episode. Thank you, LinuxActionNews.com.
Do it. You can find all the other shows over at JupiterBroadcasting.com. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next week. Hey, yo. That was a Coda Radio.
Hey, that
Now
was
we-
fun.
Now we go to jbtitles.com.
Did we get much?
I don't know. Oh, right. I forgot that it's still down. I
It-
was
Is
expecting
it
that-
down?
well, it's not
Oh.
down. It's the...
Oh, right. Yeah, dang it.
Oh, it's the other show.
I was the dummy that assumed if you transfer the domain, it would transfer the DNS settings, but that's stupid. So I guess I got to get that pointed at DO's name servers, I guess. I don't DNS much anymore, so.
Chris, if you want to
It's
hang
still
out for the second one,
pending transfer.
I'd at least be cool with that.
Well, I don't know if people like me sparingly or not. I don't have a sense on that. Do you guys have a sense on that? I don't want to overstay a welcome, you know what I mean? But I'd be happy to
It
stay,
doesn't-
but I don't necessarily want to overstay a welcome. Because I feel like, it's maybe better sparingly, but I don't know.
Either way is fine. It doesn't. I mean,
I
Yeah.
suppose it's slightly more relevant since you asked that question about object-oriented stuff. We would kind of be talking about that in the next episode.
true, but maybe it's going to be too much in the weeds. I forgot what we were doing because
Yeah, that's fair.
my brain don't work.
JB
Do
titles.
it.
JB
Well, I'll figure out a title.
titles.
I'm going to go to the little girl's room.
All
Or should
right.
we stop this recording, or are we going to do it in one?
Oh, yeah, that's a good
Yeah, let's do
idea.
it.
Stop the recording.
All right, let's count it down.
3, 2, 1. Stop.
Stop.
Man, it's hard to
All
boat.
right, and I
Yeah, I'm
will.
gonna find the IP here.
You want the wave, right?
Yeah, or FLAC, whichever's easiest.
How many bits you want? 16.
Yeah,
Why is it giving me
16's
all these,
fine.
16's
You said-
plenty for you.
It used to never
You
give
fit
me
in there.
options.
There we
It
go.
was just like
Wes put the old IP there in the chat room. Freedom Fighters, Objectively Old, Jehovah Linuxers.
Thanks, guys. Joe, I think we have a winner on that one.
I don't know. I don't want to that could be. Maybe people would consider that offensive though.
If they're actual Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
I'm sure we have a pretty big fan base.
What were my? Yeah, I think we're big. You know what?
Mike's
What were
old
my
man
famous
hat.
last words?
I don't know.
I like objectively old. Oh, that's you, of course.
Yeah.
I always like yours. All right, I'll be back.
Boom. Getting 3 boats now. I'm feeling good.
Oh, yeah, get the vote on.
We have sous vide chicken breast that has been pulled and then soaked in a caramelized onion jam. If you would like to make yourself a sandwich,
That's crazy sauce.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
got the old sous vide going last night.
Yeah, you did.
Well, Hadia did. Oh yeah, JB. Oh no, check the link in the chat room because JB Titles DNS is in transition.
104.131.128.91. That's right. It's the catchiest website name we could think of. Mike's old man hat getting no love. I don't know if
Man,
we need
I
to do
wanna
something because Jupiter Colony is just pending transfer still.
Oh god, it's such a pain in the ass to get things out of GoDaddy sometimes. They have these, so you got to go in there. Of course, you got to unlock the domain. Then you got to go in there and change another setting. And then if you have privacy set up, you got to make sure that's current because,
Of course.
which mine wasn't, so I had to change that and then wait a few days. Makes me sleepy, Wes.
That's what naps are for.
Here, you can take that over there since I think I will excuse myself so that way I don't want to overstay my welcome. Keep it rare.
Make it a treat. Yeah.
So Docker compose up and then Linux server IO / name of container.
Yeah. And I mean, you could probably just do up to and it'll figure out what it needs
I
to
tried
do.
Docker up and it was like, go fuck yourself. It was like, no way.
Okay. Yeah.
You want to SSH into it right now? Login is oh, well, you don't have to do it. I mean, I think you need to log in as Studio because I think they're all in the Studio home folder or
yeah.
going as root and whatever. But I think they're all in the Studio home folder. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. 7.4. And then then think it's media setup. And then it's that last one there. Oh, yeah, I effed up my...
We've got some broken YAML.
What did I break? You know, this is what I get for using Nano. This is what I get. Damn it. Oh, I didn't mean to really interrupt, but I just thought...
Yeah, it happens. See, what you need over here, because YAML is one of those space-sensitive environs, you need 2 spaces like that.
I didn't notice there was 2 spaces there.
Yeah, you see how that tiny thing like fucks up your whole
course.
S? And
That's what I love about this kind of stuff.
nope, that's...
So what does that mean?
Ba-boom!
So it's working?
Yeah. Creating application.
Okay, good. Oh, yeah. Sweet.
Now, right now, it's just going to run like attached here, so we'll probably want to... Like, I could kill it and do it as a daemon.
So what's the... So yeah, I kind of... Actually, once it's done doing its thing, I kind of... Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I kind of curious to see what that syntax is. What's its... just dash D? Oh.
Yeah,
God, that's so simple.
Maybe it's over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it just detaches from it. Yeah.
Oh, that's so
and then
great.
you can do
Did you see what
logs.
port it's on? Hit up again for me. Oh, logs. Okay. It's Docker dash compose. Right. Okay.
And you can do everything through the regular Docker stuff because it just makes Docker containers. This just gives you shortcuts because it'll go figure out like which container it should talk to.
7878. It looks like.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and you can see.
All right, functional programming for functioning alcoholics.
All right. So let's see.
We're doing some Docker.
Yeah,
compose
7878.
over
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, I'll go screw that. All right. I'll excuse myself so that way I don't overstay my welcome.
here. Yeah, he's got a task now.
And I'm gonna go
he's
work
got a
on this.
task.
You work on that task.
You guys have a great show, and enjoy the downtime next week or whatever it is. Just try to enjoy it. Fuck. That's all. Gosh. One bit of advice. Don't get all.
I will be writing closure and cursing at Wes and
Yeah, that's
Slack.
right. I'm excited for that already.
Hey, Bryce, did you actually read this full article?
Which one?
The one you sent, card management.
Wait, sorry, which one?
The card. Wait, am I fighting complexities in software development? Why is it called card management?
I think it's part of that application or something.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so, but I read it like right when I first saw it.
Okay, I skimmed it between the episodes, and I mean, I get the point.
Yeah, we don't
I
have to
think.
talk about it. I mean, I don't. Whatever.
It's up to you. Whatever. I mean, I think we have a lot here. So
They're not like perfectly trimmed, but I have a couple clips we could play too.
okay, I love it. Tomorrow, live on Coda Radio.
But
We
let me.
won't
I
be
just
on
gotta
the
save
air.
them out and transfer them real quick here.
Yeah, take your time. I'm
And
just
I'm,
being annoying.
Oh no, totally. Oh yeah, I guess we never chose a title, huh?
Oh, I thought you guys. I like the objectively old, but
Objectively old.
although I am going to suggest a title for the new episode.
Yeah, here I'll end it and start a new one.
Let me know when.
Wait for it.
Don't listen to JB Bot. There's more Coder.
Coda
There you
Radio
go.
starts now. I mean, not right now, but in a minute or two. You know, we're in the interstitial phase, as they call it.
We are in the coding launch bay. Oh no, I put it in the wrong one because I didn't wait because I'm done.
Hey, you be nice to that, Mr. Dominic.
His name is Wesley.
John Ray. All right, there we go. You say something.
I like turtles. Oh, I should start recording, or we should sync that up or something.
Oh, yeah, here, one sec. I'm still, I gotta transfer some.
All right, 3. Oh, and I gotta upload this too. Functional dance party. We're dancing. They told us we had to stop. We said no. Dance Dance Revolution. Oh yeah. My wife just went to Walgreens, picked up my prescription. Oh yeah. It appears to be a horse pill. Nay.
That's nice, though, because waiting in that pharmacy line,
That's right. Bite Bitten's gonna cook, but is he gonna save any for Wes and I?
oh yeah, where's Lars, Bite?
Not a Duck is suggesting no country for gray beards. That's called Silicon Valley. Can functional programming make your Switch fans quieter?
Oh yeah,
I
totally.
didn't even know the Switch had a fan.
Yeah, how are your salsa skills there, Mr. Dominic? That's what the chat room
My
wants to know.
salsa skills are right up there with my closure skills.
Impeccable.
Non-existent. Yes. I make tomato sauce. In a world littered with correlated objects, one language comes to settle the score, make your data immutable, and bring justice to the Republic. That language is Banks Sharp.
I hope this is a new project that you're about to unveil.
Yeah, I'm just opening. You know what? Jar Jar Inc. Everybody will hire us, right?
Heck yeah.
Mahore? Person
I mean, you might
Mojo
get
returns.
sued real quick. I don't know.
You know what? I like getting sued quick rather than taking a long time. Hungry Burger Gif. I am George Takei. They called
He's
me
just got
Mr. Sulu.
such a good voice, you know?
He really does.
All right.
I didn't know. Oh, the salsa. Ah, y la merengue. Woo! Oh, God. Opening the right document. Champion mode.
Get the hell out of here.
The 40. I don't even understand what you did, but okay. Turth is insulting either me or George Takei. Either way, I love George Takei, because Mr. Sulu. See, I can't do Kirk. I'm sorry, I just can't do Kirk. My Shatner's not on point. I could try Picard. Barbarity! Barbarity! I could do Cisco. It's kind of, but he's always just like disappointed in his son, right? He's like,
All right, let's see
I
if
mean,
this.
the industry basically, like, if you think about it, the industry has been dominated by object-oriented programming.
Just think about it.
To
Dominated.
the point where, and that was the function, interacting agents working with each other. It's really mostly thinking of a program as a pipeline of input to output. We think of, okay, what is the data that a program is going to be receiving? You might be thinking,
Just checking these
well,
here
we
real
want to
quick.
avoid state, but mutable state and side request to another server. Concentrating is saying, okay, well, if we have to have values, let's keep them all in one place rather than throughout the program. So I mentioned Reframe, which is
Cool. Okay. All right. Well, I've got 3 clips that we can play when we want to, and that's part one of the. It'll be one from one of the links I got.
Just fire away. Yoga? Downward facing dog we must.
Oh, I should open the right doc. That'd be helpful. All right, let me just transfer my files over to that Drew character real quick here.
7 years, I did not know JBot censored people. Good on you, JBot. Keep those standards. JBot's written in Ruby. He only takes
Yeah, it
17
sure
gigs
is.
of RAM.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Woo. I mean, if you wanted to fix it up for us, Mike.
I could send it to me, or it's open source. I hope it better be. I mean,
Yeah, it's all based on
Is
it.
it?
I don't know if the current one is. The current one running was maintained by Rikai. I've kind of helped it along, but haven't had time to really invest in it. It needs a little elbow grease,
okay. Well, there's also a JBot that is a bot framework in Java. Look at that.
Oh, of course there is.
Go into the Jupiter Broadcasting GitHub. Oh no, I'm not, because apparently I logged out and I need to 2FA in, and I'm too lazy to do that. While Wes sets everything up, public service announcement, kids. Always 2-factor auth your GitLab, GitHub, Bitbucket, whatever.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Yeah. Mine has been for quite some time. Best thing I ever did. Although I never actually had a breach of our source control. But
Yeah, it's like if that's where
I-
you're gonna put all your stuff that you care about,
yeah.
maybe that's a place to keep things safe. All right, more Coda Radio. This is great.
5 coders, 3 radios. Anything can happen. Coder injustice for all.
Justice, you say?
Yeah, like the old games, or not old, but Apple relaunches Texas Hold'em.
Yeah. So, did you want to include this first card management business?
That is up to you.
I could take it or leave it. I mean, it's
Then
interesting.
let's leave it. I mean, it's interesting. I'm not sure Why don't we save it for next week? Because I'm not sure I've thought about it enough to have an opinion that's other than, you're right, Wes.
Yeah.
Oh boy, Wes. My name's Mickey Mouse. Is there any properties you like? Because I'll buy them. Go ask Tony Stark and Luke Skywalker.
Yeah. All right. So
Uh-huh.
we can cover a little light stuff with this Redis business, and then kind of get into
Sounds good.
yeah. And then which one is this? This. Yes. Okay.
Let me know when you want to record.
Got a funky keyboard I'm adjusting to. Let me just close the door and then I'll be ready.
We are being censored by my Chrome tab, which died.
All right, Mr. Dominic. I think I'm ready.
Yep.
What's this guy's name?
Oh boy, Turth. If we could all be part of the Linux Academy Disney family. Actually, don't joke. Disney has a huge tech operation down here, or had. And yeah, I would not be surprised if they bought everybody.
Yeah, right.
Seriously.
Didn't they just buy Hulu?
Did they really?
Yeah, I think so.
Holy crap. Okay. I did not know that. It's like a machine where there's going to be two companies by the time we're both 50.
Let's hope we just both work for the same one, I guess.
That's right.
Unless we'll have more, maybe we'd have more fun. I guess it'd be like a fun podcast if we were both we worked for each of the other companies.
That would be the battle lines are drawn. It's Disney and Apple.
We try to reveal as little as we can while still having an interesting discussion.
Yes. All right. I am ready to sync when you are.
Okay, yeah. Sweet deal. This is 366. Okay. 3, 2, 1, record.
Got to do it again. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
Pop up. All right. Go ahead.
Let me just reset. This is the glamorous life. All right. 3, 2, 1, record.
Record. Okay.
Okay. I got soundboard, and we can do a 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
4.
Okay, and now some silence. Are you ready for some silence, Mr. Dominic?
Oh, I was silent. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was undoing
all
my
right.
gates. Yeah. All right. 3,
Tell me when.
2, 1. All right.
Okie dokie, artichoke.
Oh, is that a nickname for me there, Mr. Dominic? I like it.
You like it? Well, then artichoke. You are a very healthy vegetable.
Artichokes are delicious, yeah. I mean, most of the time you just dip them in unhealthy things, right? But,
Yeah, and like ranch dressing or whatever. But yeah.
okay. Coda Radio 366, huh?
All right.
Let's do it. Watch out.
Watch out.
This is Coda Radio, episode 366, recorded on July 8th, 2009. Nope. Wow, I'm just like messing up the intros today. All right, try that one more time. Sorry, Mr. Dominic. Have me a drink of water.
Yep.
Something about July. Just can't get my head around it.
It's just hot.
Yeah, it's hot. My brain's melted. Possibly like a firework, kind of jostled it loose a little bit, not in a good way. I don't know if there is a good way.
Hmm.
This is Coda Radio, episode 366, recorded on July 8th, 2019. Hello and welcome to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show that takes a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. My name is Wes, and I'm glad to be joined the explorer on the functional final frontier, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hey, Mike.
Hello, Wes. We are all functioning on this very special episode of Coda
Yeah,
Radio.
that's right. So to be out in the open about it, this is a pre-recorded episode. We're both away, but we didn't want to leave you high and dry with no Coda Radio to listen to. Of course not. So we thought now is a good time. Mike brought this topic up. It's obviously something near and dear to my heart. We talk about functional programming all the darn time. Maybe we could actually take some time talk basics and maybe a little bit about, using it in the gosh darn real world. What do you think, Mike?
I love it.
Okay. Well, before we dive into that rather heady topic, I thought, this is Coder Radio. We haven't talked about WebAssembly in what feels like months, and I noticed a little story. I'm curious to see what you think about it. Some people over at Fluence have been working on a port of Redis to WebAssembly.
Wow. Yeah, so I guess it's true. Everything that we can put in WebAssembly, we're going to. Kidding aside, actually, this is pretty neat because now you can run Redis basically anywhere WebAssembly runs, which, depending on when you're listening to the show, might in fact be everywhere. I think this is cool. I think more things like Redis, like foundational things that you use to build other solutions, that can be ported to WebAssembly as an option, not maybe as a mandatory thing just yet. I think that's going to, frankly, just open up a lot of opportunities for people. How about you?
Yeah, right. I mean, if you're already familiar with Redis, you can use it, and you're able to just sort of port some of that know-how and methodology and use it in the browser, or as a on some random thing that's had a WebAssembly environment ported to it. That is pretty handy. And I think Redis is kind of a good mix. It's not crazy complicated, single-threaded, but also super useful. It's a nice abstraction. Many people use it. And if you go take a look at the article, which I encourage you guys to do, it's a good breakdown of sort of like where this tech is at and some of the problems you might run into and why it's not, it's not necessarily the perfect solution or something you might even want to use, but it's a nice way to see how this stuff is all evolving, because it takes a lot to get something actually running as a complicated existing application actually running in WebAssembly. Do you use much Redis yourself, Mr. Dominic, since we're talking about the subject?
You can use it quite a bit in Rails, and I have. I mean, ironically, I would probably not use it in WebAssembly, but yeah, I've used it in conjunction with Rails projects.
Well, I imagine this trend will continue. We'll keep seeing more and more things ported to WebAssembly. Have you had a chance to play with it anymore?
Honestly, I have not. I take it back, actually. When I did what was it? Oh my God, the Realm ML language you had me do.
Oh, Reason ML, yeah.
Reason ML. That had a WebAssembly capability, and I did play with that some.
That's an interesting point too, right? We're seeing more as newer languages develop. I imagine WebAssembly might just be a runtime they're already thinking about.
It's going to be the one true runtime, I bet.
I would like to play a little bit more on the back end with just running it sort of on the command line and away from a browser. I've only ever played with it in a browser so far, and not enough to do anything useful, I'm afraid. But definitely something we're going to continue to watch. Now, Mike, you came to me with the topic for today's show, and you had an interesting idea for the approach. And I'm kind of just curious, as we get started, where are you on your journey of exploring functional programming?
So I'm basically a convert. I've been exploring it for a while. I've been more and more bought into it. In fact, I'm writing a post. I've been writing it for weeks. I haven't finished it. Titled "F# is your functional gateway drug," and I'll be damned if it isn't. It's been pretty interesting. I think we're going to dive into this a lot, but the thing that really drew me to FP was solving, I want to use a technical term here, the gobbledygook spaghetti code problem that you tend to get with traditional OO patterns.
Absolutely.
Yep. Gobbledygook, you can look that up or call someone from MIT, they'll explain it to you. And I have to say, I am more and more, and I've looked at this for a long time, but I am now basically trying to be functional first, which is a big change.
So looking at that as the paradigm that you try to express a problem in, rather than defaulting to using an object-oriented approach.
Exactly. So where I can find a functional pattern that works, where I can do something with either no state or at least immutable state, that is what I'm doing first. Now, that's not to say I'm not still using a bunch of OO, right? Of course I am. I read a lot of Ruby, a lot of Rails. But I really am. I'm trying to not have, magical singleton classes that have a bunch of state and do a lot of stuff, right?
That's a good clarification. And, that's another thing I think we should talk about is it's all well and good, right? I've assigned you to use Clojure for a week or two, and you've been playing with F#. Well, there's lots of almost mainstream functional languages these days, especially if you include some of the modern features .NET and Java have. All that means you can do functional programming. You can apply functional programming techniques or design philosophies or patterns in a lot of the languages that you use. I imagine this means you've kind of had to teach, if you've converted, you've had to start teaching those around you too, right?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, some of the languages make it easier than others to kind of bring people in. So C# in particular, particularly version 6 and 7, and I think the current one is 8, but I'm mostly using 7, has adopted a lot of some of the patterns from F#, and they're optional, right? You don't have to do it, but you certainly can. Other languages I think are a little harder to be kind of functional with, particularly Ruby. It's not impossible, and there's definitely like trivial things are obviously easy because they're trivial.
Of course.
But like, just active record, right? When I say Ruby, I really mean Rails. Active record, and just the whole thing is designed to be OO. Swift is actually really nice if you try to look at it from a protocol/functional or programming orientation. Yeah, I mean, so far I think C# has actually added of the languages I use routinely, added the kind of the easiest transition. But then you know what happens. You're using C# and you're just like, oh, but I could be in F# right now.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
That might just be me.
No, of course. Once you've sort of had a taste of it, you want more.
Right. Now where do these languages stack up against, obviously, the one true language, Clojure?
I mean, I don't know if you should call it that. We shouldn't forget things like Haskell and
you
Idris on the spectrum, right?
Oh, Haskell. All right. So maybe this is actually a good conversation. Functional is not really binary, right? There are functional programming languages. There are languages that use functional programming patterns. There are languages like C# that can use functional programming patterns but aren't really functional. What would you say is like the reference implementation?
I don't know if I would say there is a reference implementation, but I think it is important to talk about terminology, of course. And there are multiple approaches. A lot of them are, a lot of functional programmers or people that identify that way do come from some of the, the static type ecosystem. And there's a lot of great things over there. You were just talking about Swift, right?
Right.
Interestingly, though, I see a number of people talking about some, especially when you're trying to apply these techniques across languages. I think there are some simpler stuff you can use to start with. And, by all means, explore all the routes available and find out what works for you in your problem domain and how you like to model problems. But I think you can, the big ones that come to my mind is stuff like using plain immutable data, rather than, like you said, a lot of stateful singleton objects, stuff like that, having data, and then in particular having immutable data that doesn't change out from under you, especially if you're using any sort of concurrency in your application. And with a name like functional programming, it probably also makes sense to talk about functions. Now, I don't think you necessarily have to have like first-class functions, although you probably should, and not having them is kind of crazy in 2019. Thankfully, we do have them in languages like Java now, right? So that's nice. But I think you should also focus on idempotent functions, right? And modeling things as quote unquote pure functions, where they're like mathematical functions and the output to what extent possible. And this is where you can get on a conversation, right? And like Haskell or Clojure, like how far do you want to push that? Where do you call it practical and accept, little bits of state where you need them? Or, how functional do you really try to make things? But to the largest extent possible, kind of push state to the edges, isolate I/O, make it really clear when you're doing those sorts of things, and let everything else in your application be pure functions.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the keys, right, is that anytime there's state or, mutability, it's a good sign that you're in the functional world if you're basically forced to be very intentional about those things, right? You can't have accidental state. And maybe, Wes, just for a second, let's just dive into some of the problems you're going to avoid. For instance, side effects, right? you mentioned concurrency. That's a huge deal. Just thinking about asynchronous programming and concurrent programming is actually, and for me, and I'm wondering what you think about this, easier if I think about it in a functional paradigm. And frankly, the less state I have, the less concurrency hurts.
Yes, exactly, right? I mean, you can get into situations where if you've modeled it nicely, then because it's a pure function, you know it doesn't affect anything outside of its scope. So you can just, if you need to, have it, give it more data and run it on more threads. Where does that come up for you? I mean, are these multi-threaded web applications that you're running, or separate Rails processes?
So a lot of what I do is actually I spin up microservices for some of these monolithic Rails apps that do like heavy data processing.
Okay,
Yeah.
little helper services on the side.
Little helper services, and those I really do try to keep them in F# and basically truly functional. I have one alive right now in Rust that's doing some interesting STL stuff. But again, I kept that. I mean, that's granted. Some of this is by virtue of it's literally running on not Lambda, Azure Functions.
Yeah.
So
sure.
it's data in, data out. Right. There's no state. You get STL file in. You get we do a bunch of stuff to it. The result out. That helps me. If you know hosting Rails apps, you do want to avoid your process getting too big and taking too much memory and having issues.
Why is that such a problem? It's nearly every Rails app that I've had to support over the years at one point
Has
or
that
another
issue.
gets into that state. Yeah.
Yeah, there are some. It's like GNOME, right? It's like the GNOME desktop. There were some decisions made long ago that leave it open to this problem. Part of it is Rails is doing a lot of magic for you, and that just takes memory.
So this is an interesting example. Maybe you can help me. I've been doing a little
Sure.
bit of Ruby. I've had some tools that I've been using that are Ruby libraries or work well in the Ruby ecosystem, and I'm familiar enough with it. It's not my best language or anything, but I know how to get stuff done. So it's been an interesting experiment to just try to do so in a functional manner where possible.
Ooh.
But I do find myself often running into things that I think, I wish this API was modeled differently. So one of those examples was I'm using the Mechanize gem. Which is it is a stateful thing. You get this like stateful web browsing agent that you can go, crawl and interface and submit forms and walk around web pages. And honestly, it makes it really easy. Like there's, if you just need to go automate something that doesn't have an API, it's a pretty helpful tool. There's similar libraries for other environments, but you get this like crazy, weird object. And anytime you have to deal with serialization or discoverability. Now, in static languages, it can be a lot better. You at least get some nice IntelliSense sort of stuff to try to help you. And, maybe if I had RubyMine open, it would do that too. It's just all these different objects have different APIs. And most of what I wanted out of it was data, right? Like I'm just trying to get like values out of these form fields.
Yeah.
Why are you giving me this object? I just want a hash map.
So, I mean, what you've just hit is the fundamental criticism of Ruby, and usually people mean Rails. But is this actually a Rails project, or is this something separate?
There is some Rails, but most of these are little smaller things on the side.
Okay, yeah. I mean, Ruby. I like Ruby. I'm not going to dunk on Ruby. I have
And there's
large
plenty of
systems
stuff,
written.
like the blocks and map, and like there's all the primitives are there.
Well, it had so this is a thing. So newer versions of the language. It's actually a great contrast to C#. They do have it, right? Like you can do the MapReduce thing, which I think you're going to talk about in a little bit. It's like one of the core functional techniques, right, in Ruby. The problem is every gem, which for those who don't know, gems are basically Ruby libraries that you pull in, is probably written to be stateful in OO. So it's going to kick and scream every step of the way, just like what you were saying, Wes, where you just want a hash, right? You would just like a hash, or what I would call a hash dictionary, whatever, of that data.
Yeah, key value store with other simple plain data underneath it.
By the way, calling hashes dictionaries is an Objective-C thing. Just throwing it out there. As I'm sure you know now.
I do. I have recently learned. It's not a bad. Not a bad term.
It's not a bad term. It's a fair term for it. But the problem is, you're right. I mean, personally, this is one of the more annoying things about the Ruby ecosystem to me is oftentimes, instead of just being able to get a hash of whatever it is, like you're using this Mechanize gem, you have to learn the API for that specific library, which it's, there's a cognitive load there. A more functional first kind of environment, that wouldn't be the case, right?
Right.
Just wouldn't.
Yeah, and as you're surely discovering with Clojure, that very much has a data-driven sort of thing, where instead of statefully calling methods on an object to configure some library, you pass it some nested data structure that acts as the configuration for it.
I'm curious, what type of small Ruby apps are you actually writing? Like, are they web or are they like command line?
A little bit of both.
Okay, well, Mechanize is obviously web, but okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little bit from column A. And
how are you finding it when you try to apply a functional technique? Is it, or have you just given up on that?
I mean, I don't know that it would work super well if I had to interrupt with a lot of like regular Ruby developers. They'd probably be like, why are you doing it this way? But I think for the most part, I mean, I just, I try to, and I have some examples we could talk about. I just try to push my interactions with the functional, I just try to push my interactions with the, object-oriented or imperative stuff kind of to the edges. And I have a big bank of, pure functions to call on, and then probably some main thing somewhere that's going to go do some I/O or like call into the mechanized stuff to get the data out of it. And then from there, I can process the data in a series of maps and reduces and filters or, whatever. Maybe some loops just because it's, easy in Ruby.
Yeah, well, and you can also iterate over Ruby collections, right?
Yes, yeah. And so Ruby has lots of nice little primitives, and I find there's a slightly, I don't know, I don't really love either of it in Python or Ruby, trying to fudge it in like this. But I find myself frustrated less in Ruby, I think. Like, it's just, even though there's this, Rails-led reputation for magic, like every time in Python when I try to like append to a list or an array or whatever, and it mutates it, I always get so confused. And in Ruby, I find myself, I don't know, it just feels a little more intuitive for the way that I want to work, and it's a little more like working with like proper immutable stuff. So it's not been too bad. Yeah. I think mostly it's just that like the culture isn't there, and
oh no, the culture. I mean, it's again, the biggest library is Rails, right? So it's a deep OO. Yeah.
So I thought maybe we could talk a little bit. I have a resource that I think it's a great talk that I recently found. It was from a Clojure conference, but I think it's totally applicable to people just trying to program or explore programming in more functional ways. And that is a talk called "Solving Problems the Clojure Way" by Rafal Ditwald. I have just 3 clips here I thought we could go through. And the first one kind of talks a little bit about, like, we do live in an object-oriented world, and there's, we just kind of have to accept that.
Let's do it.
And the OOP approach has worked quite well. I mean, the industry basically, like, if you think about it, the industry has been dominated by object-oriented programming to the point where, JavaScript added this way of doing things. But it's not without its detractors, and it's not without its problems. I'm not going to go into in depth what the problems with object-oriented programming are, other than to just say that functional programming does have a completely different set of answers to a similar problem. So when with object-oriented programming, they said let's organize state, use objects, and think of programs as interacting agents. Functional programming instead agrees state is confusing, but says, let's avoid it. Let's just say state is bad. And when I say state, I mean any values that change in place. So if you have an array and you want to increment it in an imperative programming language, you just increment that array. And in functional programming, we'd say, you know what? No, that's bad. Because then when this array is being passed to some function and that function changes it and we didn't expect that, things go wrong. Like basically state is the root of all problems. So let's try to avoid it. Now, compared to classical imperative programming, and functional programming languages also gave us a new tool, and that was the function. And that's to distinguish, and we use the word function to really distinguish from the idea of a procedure. And the main difference between a function and a procedure is that a procedure, you can declare, you have to give it a name, and you can still pass procedures around maybe by name. You can pass the names of procedures around, but you can't pass a given function that you create dynamically as a value, whereas with functions you can. So procedures can't really be passed around by value, and you can't create them on the fly and pass them around, whereas with functions you can. Now, if you've worked with JavaScript, anonymous functions, they're everywhere, and so it's not that crazy of a concept. But at the time, it was definitely something very different. And if you work in a strict object-oriented programming language, they don't really have these functions that you can just pass around. Sometimes they're also called lambdas, but they don't have them. Like Java only recently, had made it possible to pass around functions on their own, and barely anyone uses that because, why do you need functions? You just have methods on objects. But in functional programming, we say, no, we don't need an object. You can just have a function. It can just sit on its own. And the mental model of functional programming isn't steps to achieve some solution, isn't interacting agents working with each other. It's really mostly thinking of a program as a pipeline of input to output. We think of, what is the data that our program is going to be receiving over time, and how do we transform that data into the outputs that we want?
I'm curious if you agree, Mr. Dominic, because that is what I find more and more when I can think of things as a transformation of a pipeline. It's just easy to think about. Now, not always, not everything can be modeled that way, but it kind of takes these techniques to an architectural level, because when you look at a pipeline, you can introspect and you can place logging or metrics easily between all the values, and you can isolate individual pieces of the pipeline to only have to reason about a chunk of it.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that metaphor before, but I like it. Top of my head, I think it's pretty good. I tend to think of it as almost a flow, but I guess that's really kind of the same thing, right? Like a stream flow, or like literal streams. I wonder, I worry about any of these analogies or abstractions, or kind of just like, metaphors is the right word, because don't they start to fall apart eventually?
Yeah, sure, right? I mean, all abstractions are leaky, as they say. So there is limited value, and you should be aware, of course, right? I mean, mostly we're talking about higher level ways to think about the problem, and then you might end up having to do something right on the outside, or sealed away in some implementation detail where, it gets a little grisly under the hood, but you're saved from having to deal with that, and you're presented with a nice, clean interface. Clojure has a data structure, or a nice little thing called transients. So most of the stuff you're working with are immutable trees, basically. Transients let you turn those into mutable stuff, and in a closed context, make a bunch of changes to them in a faster way, right? Suddenly you've got the superpower, you can mutate things. And then at the end of that transaction, it's sealed all up, and you're just presented with an immutable interface again. So, it gives you a little escape hatch where if you need to, you can get some extra speed inside some fast little function in a loop somewhere. But for everyone else, it just looks like a regular, nice, immutable value.
Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that.
Well, then here, let's see what you think of this.
Yeah.
Now, you might be thinking, well, we want to avoid state, but mutable state and side effects are inescapable. That's kind of almost the point of programming. We want our programs to do something, have some side effect. If all our program did was just make our laptop hotter and then contribute to the heat of death of the universe, it wouldn't really be useful. I mean, unless you're cold. But the purpose of programs is to do something, even if at the least it's to print out a single number. If all we want to do is take in a bunch of inputs and print out a number, that's still some side effect. It's printing to the console. But there's typically, real programs have other side effects that we think about, and it's things like, communicating to a database and changing things in a database, sending an email or triggering some other external API, making an HTTP request to another server, or writing to the file system. These are all kind of effects that a program, typically what we would want a program to have on other parts of your computer system. So functional programming would say, okay, yes, we do want side effects. And so it's not saying let's get rid of all state, let's get rid of all kind of side effects. Functional programming is saying, but let's just do our best to avoid it. And how? How do we avoid it? So how do we avoid mutable state, so values that can change? How do we avoid actually mutating that state in our programs? And how do we avoid all these other kinds of side effects? We kind of have functional programming has like 3 techniques, 3 little tricks that you can use. And those are minimizing, concentrating, and deferring. So minimizing is just trying to have less state, so less values that we're keeping around. Concentrating is saying, okay, well, if we have to have values, let's keep them all in one place rather than throughout the program. And deferring, well, we'll get to deferring in a moment. And this minimize, concentrate, defer also applies to mutations. So with mutations, we're saying, okay, let's try to have as little parts of our code that actually change values in places, so places that change state. And if we do have to have mutations, let's keep them as much together rather than spread throughout the program. And similarly with side effects. Let's try to decrease the amount of places that we do side effects, concentrate the places that we do side effects, and if possible, defer them either to kind of the last step in our program or to a completely separate system. Right? If you think about like a database, you're not dealing with necessarily doing all this fancy work that the database needs to do in order to keep track of the state and do a query and whatever. Presumably there's a whole bunch of state that is necessary. From your point of view of using a database, it's just like, here's a command. You figure it out.
And databases are something we're all kind of familiar with, right? I mean, SQL is a sort of classic declarative API. Now, it gets hairy, especially when you're trying to optimize, complicated queries, I'll admit. But at least on the surface, the idea is you just sort of say, like, hey, here's the shape of the thing I want. Go get it for me, and I don't need to reason about how you're going to do that. I'm wondering what you think, Mike, of the, some of his principles there. Minimize, concentrate, defer. Are those any? Have you used those techniques yourself?
Yeah, that's exactly what I think we both mean here, right? It's your function should only do one thing, not things plural, one thing.
One thing.
Because saying things completely cuts the knees out from you. My point there, right? With no side effects, you should minimize state. Obviously, yeah, you're gonna hit cases where you just need state, but it should be pushed off. I actually like your metaphor that as I was thinking about it, as I was listening to that, of pushing it off to the side, right? State should only come when you actually need it, not everywhere. See, I think the key here is that it's viewing your entire architecture just as data flows in to a function, it flows out, and then probably into another function. I think I'm actually a little harder on you on one point, though, Wes. I do think functions have to be first-class objects, for lack of a better word, for you to really be functional.
You're probably right there, and I'll say I certainly prefer it in a language.
Right.
Now, one thing you listener out there may be thinking is some of this stuff kind of sounds like all the the React hotness in the browser, and this sort of views on top of data and one-way data flows, reactivity, that sort of stuff. Mike, as you explore Clojure, you might come across that the Clojure script community, they love React. There's a popular sort of larger format. There's a popular sort of larger framework that is kind of similar to Redux, although older, called Reframe. And
okay,
there's a great little example in this talk about a change Reframe made that I think is a perfect example of these principles.
So I mentioned Reframe, which is the kind of Redux equivalent. It's this library that helps manage state in a front-end application. And there's also a very interesting example in a change that happened in Reframe. So originally, in one of the first, in the first 1 or 2 years of Reframe's existence, you'd have some code, like here, it's Clojure code, so you can be happy we're at a Clojure conference if you can see some Clojure code. And this is a code to register an event handler. So something, a state transition, something that like, you click a button and you want to trigger something to happen, you'd register one of these things to handle that. And so this is adding product to a cart. And in this situation, when the user clicks that button and triggers this event, we want to do three things. We want to make an AJAX call to tell the server, oh, hey, this person added this product to their cart. We might want to dispatch, so trigger some other event to happen. And we want to update our local global state object, which in this case is called DB, to indicate that that item has been added to cart. So this seemed fine, but the reframe folks are pretty happy about functional programming, and they saw this and they thought, you know what, this isn't functional enough. This could be done better, because here we have three side effects, three things that this function is doing that is triggering side effects in the rest of our system. Could we do better? And you might think, well, no, but you know what? The whole point of this is to have side effects. But check this out. They eventually came up with a new idea. They said, instead of actually calling other side effectful functions in your code, like making an AJAX request or triggering another event or updating the database. Well, actually, in this case, updating the database, this doesn't cause a side effect. This just returns a new database. So it's these two that are the problem, AJAX and dispatch. Let's instead write our functions so that they just return an object that says what I would like to be done. So I would like, if calling this event, for an AJAX event to happen with the following information. I would like for this other event to be dispatched. And I would like for the database to now look like this. But it doesn't actually do it. This function itself doesn't do those things. It just says, here is what I want to be done. So it's just like declares, these are the things I want to be done, whereas on the left-hand side, it actually does them. And then the reframe system, other parts of the system actually take this and do something with it. And this is another example of deferring. Instead of having a whole bunch of these events that actually have side effects and do things, we have these functions just declare what they want done, and we have one part of the system. It's a complicated part of the system. It has to figure out how to do all these things, do all these side effects, but at least it's all concentrated in one place, and the rest of our application is pure and easy to understand and easy to test. Like if I had to test this, I'd have to test, okay, is the AJAX event actually happening? So maybe I have to like mock an AJAX thing or actually just do an integration test. Whereas on this side, I just have to check if the thing that it's spitting out is the thing that I wanted. This is usually kind of trivial, but you can imagine that there might be some complicated stuff that's going on in here, and all you have to do is check, is it doing that complicated stuff? And then let's hope that the person that implemented, or if you implemented the thing that does the AJAX bit, it just has to figure out how to do that, and so you can test those things completely separately. So again.
And I just love that example because it makes me immediately think of what I was talking about with Mechanize, right? Like,
Right.
all right, at some point, yes, there's no escaping, maybe mocks, but certainly integration tests. Like if you're going to scrape a website, there's a real website out there, and you're going to have to, it could change. There's no replacing actual tests for that thing. But if I can move a lot of that stuff and just have a bunch in the middle that's using pure data that I'm manipulating, I can stop having to deal with all this mocking stuff, and I can just write easy tests.
No, that's obviously one of the core advantages, right? I think, particularly we mentioned Ruby before. Mocking state or creating mock state is probably the better way to phrase that. Is a huge thing that Rails developers do that takes a lot of energy and time. I'm not going to come out and be against, mocking frameworks, but yeah, not having to do that, right? Not having to create this entire infrastructure that is basically aping what real state might look like.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. And it's easy too. If you do want to say you're running some of these tests, a topic for another show is generative testing. And if a lot of your inputs and outputs are data, well, it's really easy to do that too, because you can generate data in a way that might be a little easier than having to, make objects and keep track of them and interact with them all over the place. I'm curious if you do you have any go-to libraries? Do you have any tricks that you've had to do? Something I've observed is it can sometimes be easier to teach people who are new to programming to start with some of the
Yeah.
functional stuff, because coming from an imperative language or approach, you kind of have to unlearn some things.
You have to unlearn some things, and it's not necessarily intuitive. I mean, one of the primary challenges using a lot of F# is that a good, very large percentage of the the .NET libraries, the NuGet packages you're probably going to want to use are assuming that you're in a C# OO type of pattern environment.
Yeah, and so interestingly, you're kind of in a similar place. Clojure finds itself with Java is, having system languages and paradigms to interact with, even though you live in your own world. And I'm curious, do you kind of find yourself making functional wrappers or just going with bare interrupt?
You end up writing like thin functional layers. I mean, I cannot claim that that I've never just in a rush having to ship just pulled something in, and that is one of the strengths and weaknesses of the particular case of F# is that you can always drop back to the more OO way of life if you need to.
And I think that can be important, especially as you're learning and in real life scenarios. Like, wow, it can be super useful to have an isolated learning environment, right? Like go learn SML or Scheme or something. It's also, nice to have escape hatches and easy ways to kind of fall back where you need to, because sometimes you just need to finish the darn thing, even if you're really enjoying learning. Sometimes that takes time. It takes a while, and you're a little slower.
It all takes time.
Ain't that the truth? Well, I'm going to have a bunch of links in the show notes. So the architect of Clojure, Rich Hickey, he's a big Java developer. He's given some good talks at Java communities, and he's just a great speaker in general. So I'm going to have multiple links to several of my favorite his talks. In particular, I would really point everyone at the value of values, because it doesn't have anything to do with Clojure, really. And for me, making the shift and thinking from like a stateful object, or even thinking of a dictionary as an object, and instead thinking of that as a value, thinking of it more like a number or a string and not as some mutable instance. That's huge, and it has major design decisions, but it takes a while to percolate and really enmesh with the way that you're thinking about programs. So go watch the value of values. Do you have anything that's been helpful in your journey, or you want to point people to, Mr. Dominic?
Yeah, I would really just suggest, if you're working primarily in one of these more, like a Java, C#, and all of this sounds a little intimidating, one, definitely take a look at the resources here in the notes. But also, you don't have to start by just like taking the C# example. You don't have to start by, creating a file in F# and trying to do an entire feature in it, right? You can start looking at either doing some type of MapReduce, or even just avoiding state and mutability as much as you can in C# using some of the Lambda functions. I think you'll find it helps, even if you're not, even if Wes and I haven't convinced you that this is something you really ought to do, right? I think there will be value there. You don't have to go all the way, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Just adopting a few of the techniques, thinking about things, modeling them as more pure functions. Honestly, even if you don't change anything, I think it's just useful to be aware of that, because there's tons of places that little stateful habits and techniques creep in, and if you're not careful, you'll totally miss them.
Well, it's like doing a little Objective-C. It's just important as your development as a engineer.
Yeah, exactly. It broaden your horizons. Now, Mike, you've been hard at work doing that, so here's a reminder to everyone out there. This was a pre-recorded episode, but we will be live next week. Yes, that's right. And Mike is going to be checking in on his journeys with Clojure. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm sure we'll be talking a little bit more about functional programming. Mr. Dominic, if they just can't wait, I'm sure you'll be heckling me or just yelling into the void on Twitter. What's your handle?
It's at Dumanuka.
I'm there too. I'm at Wes Payne, and you can find the whole network at Jupiter Broadcasting. If that's not enough, well, head on over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, where you can find all the other fine Jupiter Broadcasting productions and find the calendar to find out when we're here live. We're doing more live shows these days. It's way more fun when you show up, so we'd love to see you. That's it for this episode. See you next week. All right.
All right.
That was fun.
That was fun.
Hopefully those clips were good. I
I liked the clips, actually.
Okay, good.
So I have to find your closure talk. I just do. I'm going to be hunting for it.
You know, I don't know if there's a video. There's some audio of one I did about lambda calculus.
Lambda calculus.
Yeah, you know, that cool, crazy thing. And I'm actually trying. So I did that one in Java. All the demos were in JavaScript, but I've been working on one. It's been my go-to, like, on board on the plane activity. I've been working on translating it to Clojure because I just think it's going to be clearer. Because JavaScript, it was so many JavaScript arrow functions, and it's just kind of gross looking.
Well,
yeah, but it's neat. It's fun if people have never derived the Y Combinator. It's a cool activity. Actually, I was inspired by a cool, neat talk I saw in that someone gave in Ruby about it.
How was the talk?
Good, excellent. Man, it reminded me too. Ruby has so many gosh darn ways to define functions. You know?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Like they were using the arrow ones, which I hadn't even seen before I'd watched that talk.
Really? That's okay.
Yeah, it's fun.
So it's not JB titles, right?
Oh
it's,
yeah. Let me link that. We'll get
we
that
should probably
fixed.
help the good people in the chat room.
I'll go
Why
see.
is
I'd
Ruby
be able
mine-
to update the redirect. I'll see if I can do that too.
An empty line after a guard clause. First of all, why you guys do things like this?
Oh yeah, here. About a little of this while we go vote. Woo! Go to radio. All right. Well, I guess if you start the same show afterwards, it doesn't clear the old titles.
Lame.
See, that's one of the things JBot needs improved.
Not a problem.
Actually, I would like to do that. Yeah, that'd be good. Good incentive. Is make sure I have backups of it and everything, but I haven't taken the time to go prune it. Unfortunately, it was kept in a way where instead of using version control, you just make copies of folders that are Git repos, and then you put the copies inside of themselves for some reason.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, it makes
to me.
so much sense. And then at the top level, you've got a bash script, and every new version, you just add a new layer to which, where you're running rake, basically. Yeah, it's great. Oh, free collab. Just once. I don't know, I just love recursion. It's just so fascinating. Ooh,
I do
JBot
love
and
recursion.
Julia. Julia would be fun. I've really been wanting to play more with it. I've done a little bit. I made some kind of crappy graphs once. But it's so cool. It's fast. It seems pleasant to use. It's got cool macros and stuff. There's some neat differential equations libraries over there. Oh yeah, I guess at some point you'll have to pick a new language for me, although that can wait till whenever we get closer.
Yeah, let's do it next week.
You seen anything you want title-wise? Oh, I guess we could stop recording too. I'm sorry.
Oh, let's do that real quick.
All right, 3, 2, 1, stop.
Stop. Okay. Export that before I forget.
Thank you. Much appreciated, Mr. Dominic. This has been fun.
6.
Hey, not too bad. It's like 2 o'clock or 5 o'clock for you.
Not bad at all.
And both of them, I think, are going to end up, right around 40, 42 minutes or something. So
Yeah, that's pretty good. Oh, yes, we have all the other ones.
I didn't mind functional first. That was my suggestion.
Let's do functional first. I like it.
All right. Easy peasy.
All right. It's peasy. All right, bye, chat room.
Get out of here, Mr. Dominic. You go fight the good fight. Figure out all your clauses. Get the brackets in the right spot.
Will do. Bye.
Bye. Free JBot. Yes, it should be. You're right. Assembly. That's what we need. If anyone steps up and writes a brainfuck bot, I'll run it. We will need community help to make patches to it, though. Is there like a brainfuck to JavaScript compiler yet? Brainfuck.js? Beam bytecode. To skip all the rest of the stuff, go straight to bytecode. I like that too. All right, chat room. Well, that's enough silliness. I'm going to get out of here. Although this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for hanging out with us. It makes Coder Radio just a blast to do. Now, don't be strangers either. We're going to have a great Linux Unplugged coming up tomorrow. I'm excited for that already. We're doing lots of prep work. We got some good stuff in the works. One you don't want to miss. Although, why would you miss any of them? That's just crazy talk. Thank you so much for joining, and see you tomorrow.